There are gods who are known for their strength. Gods who rule, who fight, who protect, and then there are those who don't fit into any of those roles. Loki was never meant to be trusted. He wasn't the strongest among the gods. He wasn't the bravest. He didn't lead armies or rule over kingdoms. And yet, he stood among them not as a king, not as a warrior, but as something far more unpredictable, a trickster. Loki lived in a world built on order. The gods of Asgard valued loyalty, strength, and honor. These were the rules that held everything together. Rules that kept chaos away. But Loki was not bound by those rules. He laughed when others were serious. He questioned what others accepted. He crossed lines that no one else would dare to approach, and somehow, he was still allowed to stay. This is what made him dangerous from the very beginning, because Loki was trusted, not completely, not blindly, but enough to be welcomed, enough to be included, enough to stand beside gods who would one day fear him. At times, Loki even helped them. He solved problems no one else could fix, used his intelligence, his cunning, his ability to think differently. Where others relied on strength, Loki relied on unpredictability, and it worked. There were moments when the gods needed him, moments when his trick saved them, when his ideas protected Asgard from danger, and in those moments, it was easy to forget what he truly was. Not a hero, not a villain, something in between. But trust is not built only on actions. It is built on consistency, and that is something Loki never had, because behind every clever solution, there was always another side, a hidden intention, a choice that didn't fully align with the others. Small things at first, almost unnoticeable, a joke taken too far, a lie that didn't need to be told, a decision that created more problems than it solved. The gods noticed, not immediately, not all at once, but slowly, like cracks forming in something that once seemed stable. And yet, they still kept him close, because Loki was useful, because he was different, because they believed they understood him, but they didn't, because Loki did not think like them. Where they saw loyalty, he saw limitation. Where they saw rules, he saw restrictions. Where they saw order, he saw something that needed to be broken. And the longer he stayed among them, the more that difference grew. It's easy to trust someone. When they help you, it's much harder to see what they might become, and that is where Loki's story truly begins, not with betrayal, but with trust, because the most dangerous betrayals never come from enemies. They come from those you let stand beside you. Trust does not break all at once. It fades, slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed, until the moment it's too late. For a long time, Loki existed in that space between loyalty and chaos. He wasn't fully against the gods, but he was never truly with them either. And that balance could not last forever. The first real shift did not come from hatred. It came from a choice. A moment where Loki decided that the rules of the gods no longer applied to him. There was a time when the gods of Asgard felt safe, protected not just by their strength, but by the belief that their world could not be easily broken. They had walls, power, and control. But Loki saw something else. He saw weakness, not in their strength, but in their certainty. And so, he did something no one expected. He helped create a threat, not to destroy the gods immediately, but to prove that they were not untouchable. It started as a deal. A builder arrived, offering to construct something impossible, a wall that would protect Asgard from all danger. In return, he asked for something that seemed unthinkable. Freya, the sun, the moon, the gods refused. But Loki convinced them to agree. Not fully, not without conditions. He twisted the terms, shaped the agreement in a way that made it seem safe. He assured them it would never be completed, that it was a trick, a game he controlled. And for a time, it worked. The builder began his work. Day by day, the wall rose higher, stronger, faster than anyone expected. What was supposed to be impossible started becoming real. And that's when the gods realized something. This was no longer a game. If the wall was finished, they would lose everything they had tried to protect. And suddenly, they turned to Loki, because it was his plan, his idea, his responsibility. This is where betrayal begins to take shape, not as an act of destruction, but as a mistake that others are forced to pay for. The gods demanded that Loki fix what he had started, but there was no simple solution anymore. The situation had grown beyond control. So Loki did what he always did. He found a way, not through strength, not through honesty, but through deception. He transformed himself. changed his form, his identity, his very nature, and in doing so, he distracted the builder's powerful horse, the one thing that made the impossible possible. The work stopped. The wall remained unfinished. The gods were saved, but something had changed. Because this time, Loki's actions did not feel like clever solutions. They felt like consequences. The problem had existed because of him, the danger had grown because of him, and even though he fixed it, the damage was already done. The gods began to see him differently, not as someone who helped them, but as someone who created chaos, and then controlled it. And that is far more dangerous, because it means the problem is never truly gone, only delayed. This was the moment when trust truly began to break. Not completely, not yet, but enough. Enough for doubt to grow, enough for distance to form, enough for Loki to no longer feel like one of them. And when someone stops feeling like they belong, they stop acting like they do. This was not the greatest betrayal, not yet, but it was the beginning of something much worse. Because once trust is broken, it does not return the same way, and Loki was already changing. Trust, once broken, does not disappear instantly. It lingers and looks. In silence, in the space between words, after the incident with the wall, the gods no longer saw Loki the same way. He was still there, still speaking, still laughing, still offering his clever solutions. But something had shifted. They watched him more closely, and Loki noticed. He always noticed, because for someone like him, perception was everything. He could read people the way others read stories. He could see doubt before it was spoken, tension before it became conflict, and now, he saw it everywhere, the looks that lasted too long, the conversations that stopped when he entered, the decisions made without him. It wasn't open rejection, not yet, but it was enough, because isolation does not need to be complete to be felt, and for Loki, it grew. It first, it was frustration. Why did they not understand him? Why did they trust strength over intelligence? Why did they act as if he was the problem, when he was the one solving them? But frustration does not stay small. It changes, slowly. It becomes something else, resentment, because the more Loki thought about it, the more he began to believe something dangerous, that he was never truly one of them, that no matter what he did, no matter how many times he helped, he would always be seen as different, and if that was true, then why should he keep trying? This is the moment where betrayal becomes inevitable, not because someone plans it from the beginning, but because they stop caring about the consequences. Loki did not suddenly become an enemy, he simply stopped being an ally, and once that line is crossed, everything changes. There was a god among them who represented everything Loki was not: light, purity, trust. Baldr. Baldr was loved by everyone, not feared, not doubted, loved. His presence brought peace. His existence felt safe. Where Loki created uncertainty, Baldr created calm, and that contrast became unbearable, because Baldr had everything Loki did not: trust without question, acceptance without effort, belonging without doubt. And for someone who felt like an outsider, that kind of perfection is not inspiring. It is provoking. There was a moment when the gods believed Baldr could not be harmed. They had taken steps to ensure his safety. Everything in the world had sworn not to hurt him. Fire, water, metal, stone. All of it. It seemed impossible, and to everyone else, it was a comfort. To Loki, it was a weakness, because nothing is ever truly untouchable, and if it is, it becomes a challenge. So Loki searched, not for power, not for victory, but for a flaw, something small, something overlooked, something that no one else had considered important, and eventually, he found it. Mistletoe, a simple plant, soft, harmless, forgotten. It had not made the promise. It had been ignored, and in that small, almost meaningless detail, Loki saw something else. An opportunity, not just to break the illusion, but to prove something far more dangerous, that trust can be destroyed completely, and once it is, nothing can bring it back. Some betrayals can be forgiven, some can be understood, but some change everything. The gods believed Baldr could not be harmed. It had become almost a game among them, throwing weapons, objects, anything they could find, and watching them fall away harmlessly. It was proof of safety, proof that nothing could go wrong. It made them feel untouchable, and that is exactly what Loki wanted to break. He did not attack directly, he did not reveal himself, because true betrayal does not come from the front. It comes from the side, from trust, from the belief that nothing bad can happen. Loki approached Hodor, Baldr's blind brother. Hodor could not see what the others saw. He stood apart from the game, not participating, not sharing in the laughter. Loki gave him a weapon, a simple dart made of mistletoe, harmless, or so it seemed. He guided his hand, told him where to aim, and in that moment, everything changed. The dart flew, and for the first time, it did not fall away. It struck. Baldr fell. Silence followed. Not confusion, not panic, silence, because in that moment, everyone understood what had happened. Something impossible had just become real. The god who could not be harmed was gone, and with him, something else disappeared. Trust. The gods did not need time to realize the truth. This was not an accident. This was not fate. This was a choice, and there was only one being capable of making it, Loki. The reaction was not immediate anger. It was something deeper, betrayal on a level that could not be undone, because this was not just about loss. It was about the realization that the danger had always been among them, that they had allowed it, that they had trusted it. Loki did not deny what he had done, because at this point, there was nothing left to hide. The distance that had been growing between him and the gods was now absolute. There was no return. No forgiveness. No place for him among them anymore. He had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The gods captured him, bound him, punished him, not just for what he had done, but for what he had become. And yet, even this was not the true end, because some betrayals do not end with consequences. They create something larger. The death of Baldr was not just a tragedy. It was a signal, a shift, a moment that marked the beginning of something inevitable. Ragnarök, the end of the gods, because when trust is destroyed at that level, when the foundation of everything breaks, the collapse is only a matter of time. And Loki was no longer just a trickster. He was no longer just an outsider. He had become something else, a force that would stand against the very world he once lived in, not because he was always meant to, but because, step by step, choice by choice, that is where his path had led. This is what betrayal truly is, not a single action, but a series of moments that lead to a point of no return, and once you reach that point, everything that comes after is inevitable.